In a grand city, high above on a tall pedestal, stood a magnificent statue. It was the Happy Prince. He was covered in gold leaf. He shone brightly in the sunlight. The statue was adorned with precious stones. Two sapphires sparkled like his eyes. A large ruby glowed like a beating heart on his chest. The Happy Prince was a sight to behold. People passed by the statue every day. They admired his beauty. They called him the Happy Prince. They believed he was always happy. Little did they know the truth behind his smile. The Happy Prince had a secret. It was a secret that only the little swallow would come to know. The Happy Prince was loved by all. He was a symbol of joy and prosperity. People pointed at him with pride. "Look at our Happy Prince," they would say. Children playing in the square below would look up at him. They saw only his golden exterior. They didn't see the tears that started to fall from his sapphire eyes. The Happy Prince saw the poverty in the city. He saw the sick and the suffering. His heart ached for his people. He wished he could help them. But the Happy Prince was just a statue. He was trapped in his golden shell. He was unable to move or speak. His heart was heavy with sadness. One day, a little swallow arrived in the city. He was tired from a long journey south. He was searching for a place to rest. He flew all over the city. He couldn't find a suitable resting spot. Finally, he decided to rest at the feet of the Happy Prince. As the little swallow settled down between the statue's feet, he felt something wet on his wings. He looked up. He was surprised to see tears falling from the Happy Prince's eyes. "Why are you crying?" asked the little swallow. "Your tears have fallen on me." The Happy Prince looked at the little swallow with his sad eyes. He began to tell his story. "When I was alive," the Happy Prince said, "I lived in a palace. It was a place of unimaginable beauty and splendor, where every corner was adorned with the finest decorations and the most exquisite art. The gardens were lush and vibrant, filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers and the melodious songs of birds. I knew nothing of sadness or suffering. My days were filled with laughter and joy, surrounded by people who adored me and catered to my every whim. I was shielded from the harsh realities of the world outside the palace walls." He continued, "I was always happy. My life was a series of endless celebrations and grand events where I was the center of attention, always smiling and carefree. That's why they called me the Happy Prince. My happiness was a symbol of the prosperity and joy of the kingdom. The people loved me, and I loved them in return, though I never truly understood their struggles. But now," he said, "I can see all the ugliness and misery of my city. From my vantage point, I witness the stark contrast between the opulence of my former life and the harsh reality faced by so many. My heart is filled with sorrow. The pain and suffering of my people weigh heavily on me, and I can no longer ignore their plight. I wish I could do something to help. I long to ease their burdens and bring some measure of comfort to their lives, but I am powerless in my current state." The little swallow listened patiently. The bird had traveled far and wide, and its heart was moved by the prince's tale of woe. The prince spoke of the seamstress and her sick son. He described their humble home, where the mother toiled day and night to provide for her ailing child, yet could barely make ends meet. He spoke of the poor writer shivering in the cold. A man of great talent and passion, yet his genius went unrecognized, and he struggled to survive in a world that seemed indifferent to his plight. He saw hunger and despair in every corner of his city. The once vibrant streets were now filled with the destitute and the desperate, their faces etched with the pain of their daily struggles. The Happy Prince was no longer happy. The joy that once defined him had been replaced by a deep and abiding sadness. He was burdened by the suffering he saw. The weight of his people's misery pressed down upon him, and he felt a profound sense of responsibility for their well-being. His golden exterior couldn't hide his sadness anymore. The once gleaming statue now appeared tarnished and worn, a reflection of the sorrow that had taken root in his heart. Section 5. A plea for help. a request for kindness. "Little swallow," the happy prince pleaded, "will you help me?" The little swallow looked at the prince with concern. "Take the ruby from my sword," the prince said. "Give it to the poor seamstress. Her son is very ill and she needs money for medicine." The little swallow hesitated. He wanted to fly south to warmer lands, but the prince's plea touched his heart. The swallow agreed to help. He took the ruby from the prince's sword. He flew through the night to the seamstress's house. He dropped the ruby on her table. The little swallow felt a warmth spread through him. It was the warmth of kindness and compassion. Section 6. The Swallow's Dilemma: to stay or to fly away. The next day, the happy prince asked the swallow to stay with him for one more day. The swallow, who had already delayed his journey south, was torn between his instinct to migrate and his growing sense of duty to the prince. He had another task for him. The prince's voice was gentle but filled with urgency, and the swallow could sense the importance of the request. "There is a young writer who is cold and hungry," the prince said. The writer, struggling to make ends meet, had been working tirelessly on his manuscript, hoping for a breakthrough that seemed ever elusive. "Take one of my sapphire eyes and give it to him." The swallow was hesitant. He knew the value of the sapphire, not just in monetary terms, but as a part of the prince's very being. He wanted to join his friends who were already flying south. The call of the warm southern lands was strong, and the swallow's wings ached to join the migration. But he couldn't leave the prince. The bond they had formed was undeniable, and the swallow felt a deep sense of responsibility. He was moved by his compassion. The prince's selflessness and concern for others had touched the swallow's heart in a way he had never experienced before. The swallow plucked the sapphire from the prince's eye. It was a delicate and painful task, but the swallow knew it was necessary. He flew to the young writer and gave him the precious stone. The writer was overjoyed. The sapphire was not just a gem, it was a lifeline, a beacon of hope in his darkest hour. He sold the sapphire and bought food and warm clothes. For the first time in weeks, he felt the warmth of a full stomach and the comfort of proper clothing. The swallow, despite his longing for the south, stayed with the prince. Each day, he found new meaning in his actions, realizing that his small sacrifices were making a significant difference. He had found a new purpose in his life. The swallow's journey had taken an unexpected turn, but in helping the prince, he discovered a deeper sense of fulfillment and joy. Section 7. Sacrifices made, love shared. Day after day, the happy prince asked the swallow to help the needy. The swallow, despite the approaching winter, continued to help. He took the other sapphire eye to a little match girl. He gave away the gold leaves covering the prince's body, piece by piece. As the happy prince lost his beauty, his heart grew lighter. The little swallow, despite losing his warmth, found joy in his selfless acts. Soon, the happy prince was dull and grey. The swallow was weak and close to freezing, but their love for the people of the city bound them together. Section 8. A legacy of compassion, a testament to selflessness. Winter arrived in full force, blanketing the city in a thick layer of snow. The streets were silent, save for the occasional crunch of footsteps and the distant sound of wind howling through the alleys. The cold was biting, and the city seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the storm to pass. Amidst this harsh winter, a little swallow found himself struggling. He had stayed behind to help the happy prince, but now he was too weak to fly. His wings, once so strong and swift, were now heavy with exhaustion and frost. The little swallow knew his end was near. He had given all he had to help the prince distribute his wealth to the poor and needy of the city. His tiny heart, filled with love and compassion, was now failing him. With his last bit of strength, he whispered, "Goodbye, dear prince." His voice was barely audible, but the words carried a weight of gratitude and farewell. The happy prince, with his gentle smile, seemed to hear the whisper. "Thank you for letting me share your kindness," the swallow continued. The prince's eyes, though made of stone, seemed to glisten with a tear of gratitude. "Thank you, little swallow," the prince said, his voice filled with warmth and love. "You have shown me the true meaning of love and compassion. Your selflessness has touched my heart in ways I never thought possible." The happy prince had always been a symbol of beauty and wealth, but it was the little swallow who had taught him the deeper values of life. Through their journey together, the prince had learned that true happiness lies not in riches, but in the act of giving and caring for others. The little swallow took one last look at the prince, his eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and contentment. He had fulfilled his purpose, and now it was time to rest. With a final gentle sigh, the swallow fell at the prince's feet and died. His tiny body lay still, but his spirit seemed to linger, a testament to his unwavering dedication and love. At that moment, something strange and magical happened. A soft light began to emanate from the statue, growing brighter and more intense. It was as if the love and compassion shared between the prince and the swallow had taken on a life of its own. Suddenly, the lead heart of the happy prince, which had been hidden beneath his golden exterior, broke in two. The sound was soft, almost like a whisper, but it echoed through the silent city. The next morning, the mayor, making his usual rounds, noticed the dull, lifeless statue. The once magnificent figure, adorned with gold and jewels, now looked worn and weathered. "This statue is an eyesore," he declared, his voice filled with disdain. "It no longer serves any purpose. Remove it and melt it down." Workers were summoned, and they arrived with their tools, ready to dismantle the statue. They expected the task to be simple, but as they began to lift the statue, they found it impossible to move. Despite their combined efforts, the statue remained firmly in place. "The statue is too heavy," they said, their voices filled with frustration and confusion. "It's as if it's made of lead now," one of the workers remarked, wiping the sweat from his brow. The statue, once light and hollow, now seemed to be filled with an unyielding weight. The workers tried again and again, but the statue would not budge. It was as if the spirit of the happy prince and the little swallow had anchored it to the ground, refusing to be moved. In the end, they decided to leave the statue where it was. It remained in the town square, a silent guardian watching over the city. But the story of the happy prince and the little swallow lived on. It became a tale whispered on the wind, passed down from generation to generation. The wind carried their story to every corner of the city, reminding the people of the true meaning of love and compassion. Acts of kindness and selflessness began to spread, inspired by the legacy of the happy prince and the little swallow. Their story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that true happiness lies in love, compassion, and selfless service to others. The city, once cold and indifferent, began to warm with the spirit of giving and caring, all thanks to the enduring legacy of a prince and a little bird.